Hi everyone, it's Eliana and I have a card to share with you today. I made this card right after I ordered the Courage stamp and die set from Ellen Hudson. She's still selling this on her website, and half of the proceeds of the stamp set go to breast cancer research. I am taking a little bit of Deco Art Metallic Luster Silver and putting it on my craft mat. I've added a few drops of Picked Raspberry Reinker. It is one of my favorite colors, of course. And now I've added some water to it, and now I'm just mixing it with my palette knife. I did a similar card to this a couple years ago, using blue, and I made some blue Christmas cards. I'm making sure that I'm trying to get as much of those silver chunks out as possible. And so I'm just working little circles around with my palette knife until I get everything mixed in. And I've switched over to a different palette knife that has a little bit more sturdiness to it so that I could dissolve those chunks. And once I get it to the consistency that I like, I'm just going to dip in some Strathmore watercolor paper. And I'm just pressing it in. See those little chunks? They just popped up, and so I'm just trying to spread those out so that there's not little silver pieces in there. And now I've made a mess out of the back of my cardstock. So once I get it all dipped in, I'm going to set it aside to dry. And it's such a pretty shade of pink. It's really hard to see in the video or to capture a nice picture of it, but it's just really cool looking. So now I'm moving on to my second piece of paper, and there's less liquid, so you can kind of see a little bit more silver. I'm not really sure if you can do the same technique with the embellishment mousse. I think that's what it's called, the tonic mousse. So I'm not really sure because I don't have any to try out. So I just used what I had. And the silver was a little too bold, and so I'm just taking my Distressed Ink Picked Raspberry, and I'm just rubbing it all over the front of the card. It does stain your ink pad, so you will need to clean it off later, and I believe I show that at a later point. I'm just taking a blender, an ink blender, and I'm just smoothing it out so that it's not so concentrated, and it does help the color quite a bit. So it kind of really tones down that big splotch of silver in the middle. So here's the second piece. It doesn't have the big silver splotch in the middle, so I'm going to just leave that alone. This is another scrap piece, and I was just playing around before I made a decision on what I was going to do. So I cut out that little ribbon piece, and now I'm adding some more pink to it. So you can see it's adding quite a bit to it. Instead of having it be light pink, it's more of a deep pink that I had envisioned in my brain. So I'm just using my ink blender to smooth it out quite a bit. And you can see my ink pad is got some metallic on it. But if you just take a clean piece of paper and you just rub it off, eventually you'll get all of the silver off of there. And your pad is just fine. I'm just going to wipe off my workspace, and now I'm going to try to assemble a card. Okay, so I have that ribbon cut out that I did from an earlier piece, and in my brain I kind of envisioned a monochromatic pink ribbon with a little bit of a shadow on the back, but it's just not looking so great. So I have a little scrap piece of the black, and I'm checking to see how if I like that on that black piece, and it's just too stark for me. So I decided that I want to do a shaker card. So I'm just going to take a centering ruler, and I'm just going to line up my die so that it is in the center of the card, and then I'm going to run it through my die cutter. Okay, I saved the little centerpiece because I want it to be in the on the shaker, in front of the shaker card. I'm just going to trim down this small piece of transparency. You can use acetate if you like. It's all the same to me. I'll add a little bit of adhesive to my cardstock, and then I will make the mistake of putting my transparency on without building the base of my shaker card. So I'll end up having to take this piece off in just a few minutes. And so this is kind of what I had in mind to have it be layered. I liked the lighter piece because you could see it a little bit better. And so now I have to take my card apart so I can add that centerpiece to the back of my shaker. So I'm carefully pulling everything apart. And luckily the adhesive hadn't cured yet, and so it was a little bit easy to take it apart. Now I have my card base, and I'm just using the edge of my MISTI, and I'll have everything lined up in there. And so now I'm going to add some liquid adhesive to the back of my die cut so that I could adhere it so that you could see the lighter ribbon through the front of the shaker. Now, had I thought about this, because I just figured this out not that long ago, is you can actually leave your magnet, put your magnet on there, and it will keep your, hold your piece until the adhesive dries. So now I'm adding my transparency back to my card front, and now I'm going to start building my shaker card. I'm going to add the little center part to the front of my transparency with a little bit of liquid adhesive. That way I don't lose it. I am using the darker piece so that it looks a little bit, so it matches the front of the card. And now before I get too far, I want to, and forget to do my sentiment, so I'm going to go ahead and add my sentiment to the front of the card. I've centered it on to the, just below the ribbon. I made sure that my cardstock was completely dry before I added my sentiment, and I did use my embossing bag because it is textured cardstock and I didn't want any of the silver embossing powder to stick to it. I am using Delicata Silvery Shimmer pigment ink to stamp my sentiment just so that it's all matchy-matchy and coordinating. I do it a couple of times, and now I'm trying to figure out which silver one I want to use, and I end up using this Ranger Platinum embossing powder. Or do I? I'm not sure. Let's see which one I pick. I'm just taking my little piece of cardstock, and I am actually going to use the Recollection Silver embossing powder. And so I'm just making sure that there's no little stray pieces, little stray embossing powder, and I'm just going to heat set it. And once it's done, it's looking like it's kind of blending in too much, and so I'm just taking my ink blender and I'm just adding some more color just to make that sentiment pop out a little bit more. And I don't want it to look like it's just the bottom part of the card, so I'm just adding some color to the rest of the card front. Now I don't have the video that shows how I add the sequins, so I'll just run through that really quick. I'm going to add some foam tape around the opening on this part, And once I get done, I'll add the sequins, and then I'll add the back of the card to it, and that creates your shaker. There's other videos online that kind of help you with that, but hopefully you'll get the gist of this card. And I'm sorry I don't have the that part of the card. So please be sure to give this video a thumbs up anyways, and thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.